with this accessibility, you will see proliferation of different uses. Certainly, it will become easier for students to create their own virtual reality experiences and to engage in them, be it through their phones or with things like Google Cardboard. I think that will lend the instructors an opportunity to develop, perhaps, or to weave extended reality into their curricula more extensively.
You're listening to Speaking of Language, a podcast recorded at the Language Resource Center at Cornell University. Each week, we explore a topic related to language pedagogy and second language acquisition. This week on Speaking of Language,
Simon Zuberek, the Educational Technologist from the Language Resource Center at Columbia University, investigates the application of virtual, augmented, and extended reality for learning and teaching language and culture.
Welcome to a new episode of Speaking of Language. I'm Angelica Kramer, the director of the Language Resource Center at Cornell University.
And I'm Sam Lupowitz, the LRC's media manager. Our special focus on language teaching and learning strategies in a virtual space continues today with our colleague, Simon Zuberek.
Simon is the Educational Technologist in the Language Resource Center at Columbia University. We will discuss the possibilities of extended reality, or XR, in the language classroom. Welcome to Speaking of Language, Simon.
Hey, welcome. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Thank you for taking the time to join us on our show. Before we talk all things XR, tell us a little bit more about you. What's your background? What do you do?
So I get the second question. What do I do? A lot from my family members.
Don't we all?
Yep.
From my parents specifically, and it's always easier for me to tell them what I don't do.
Okay.
To answer that question, I think to do it succinctly, sort of put in one sentence, would be that I am one of the members of the Columbia LRC team is responsible for professional development of our instructors and also pedagogical support. So within sort of that umbrella of responsibilities, I do a number of things. Each semester, I come up with a theme that is pedagogically related or calibrated, if you will. This year, the theme was new directions in computer-assisted language learning.
Very timely. Did you anticipate all of this, Simon?
No. Nobody saw it coming. And the way that I usually approach it within sort of my role at the LRC is that I structure the whole semester around a series of reading groups, which meets every other week roughly, at which we go over the most relevant and most current scholarship that pertains to the topic. Each meeting is structured differently. Each meeting features a different article, and each meeting is then followed the next week by a workshop that presents a piece of technology, maybe a platform, a tool, an app that speaks to that specific topic, that allows for leveraging the topic itself, and to sort of translate that into the classroom or world language classroom reality, to sort of manifest that. So that's kind of gives you a general overview of what I do at Columbia LRC. In addition to that, I try to be engaged actively in language promotion or foreign language promotion on campus. And then I also work with individual instructors on their various projects. And that includes extended reality, which, even though doesn't really interest all that many people in our community, it is of big interest to me. And there are instructors that work at Columbia who work with me who are also interested in these things, which makes me really happy and really excited.
Well, so that seems like a perfect segue. Since we're mostly going to talk about XR today, can you tell us a little bit about what it is and how you got interested in it?
I will work backwards. I am currently, so as an educational technologist, of course, I am interested in all sorts of technologies that are related to foreign language teaching, language acquisition, but it hasn't always been like that. I started out actually as a Germanist in Chicago, pursuing a graduate degree in Germanic studies. At which point, I really didn't know much about linguistics, applied linguistics, certainly not much about language technologies in general. But at some point during my studies, I took a course in communicative language teaching, and that got me really interested in linguistics, applied linguistics. That led to a course in computer assisted language learning, and I pretty much got hooked. I completed the degree in German at the master's level and then switched full on into applied linguistics, which then took me increasingly in the direction of technology and maybe even computer science. I get really interested in computational linguistics, natural language processing, speech technologies, speech recognition, generation, and things like that. Virtual reality sort of appeared on the horizon in conjunction with my work at the LRC, where we focus on distance teaching. We have this program called Shared Course Initiative that we run with Yale and with you guys at Cornell, which my colleague Chris Kaiser manages. That I'm not going to go into detail about it, but it essentially connects various campuses and various language classrooms and locations with high definition video conferencing equipment. So right there at the bat, we are talking about sort of immersion or immersive learning. Even though it is not, entirely immersive, it is taking place in a virtual setting, which then got me thinking about, okay, could it, like, what does it mean to be learning in this kind of setting? What kind of affordances does this kind of environment bring to the table? How does it impact language acquisition, either positively or negatively? And I started looking into these things. I started reading up on virtual learning, immersive learning, and learning in different spaces. And then that led me to the topic of virtual and extended realities as a possible, maybe, next step on the path towards, distance instruction, and maybe even shared course initiative. Who knows?
What is the difference between XR, VR, AR? I mean, there are so many. I've also recently heard mixed reality. Is that even a thing?
So what is the difference? The difference is very nebulous. But it's really simple to I think to parse it, to sort of digest it. XR tends to be understood as extended realities, but it is actually a combination, the combination of two characters, X and R. So R stands for reality, but X there doesn't stand for extended. It is just a variable that could be replaced with any other different letter. So, when we're talking about a virtual reality, that X gets replaced with V and VR. Augmented reality would be AR. Mixed reality would be MR, and so on and so forth. So instead of, confusing people by introducing all these different terms, we just have an X in front of R.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But the difference largely boils down to the degree of immersion. With virtual reality, you are kind of, full in. You are wearing a helmet or a viewing device that covers your entire field of vision, such that you don't experience visually anything else other than the rendered environment. These helmets, usually come with sort of an audio feed and haptic feedback that allows you to manipulate artificial generate objects in three-dimensional space. Augmented reality kind of removes you a little bit from that immersive experience by allowing you to sort of project things and project three-dimensionally generated objects onto the space that surrounds you, that is real, that's not generated. And then, taking even further away, we can be talking about using or experiencing immersive environments on a computer screen, which is two-dimensional, but it also offers you a degree of immersive experience, and so on and so forth.
So, what are some affordances of XR technologies in world language pedagogy? What are some methods and approaches that would facilitate the use of XR?
Okay. Wow. That is quite a question. Lots to unpack here.
Yeah, we like to ask the deep questions here on Speaking of Language.
What I've been seeing a lot is sort of the use of extended reality for the teaching of culture,
Yeah.
cultural exploration, ethnographic exploration in the world language classroom. There's a lot of that certainly happening, and that seems to be what folks are really interested in now. And it is very useful. Virtual reality or extended reality technologies definitely lend themselves to that. There is an increasing number of projects that are coming out concerning that, and they grow in sophistication. Of course, this kind of these kinds of projects tend to be more passive, in the sense that students are participating, they're experiencing extended reality, usually individually, and it is done, and they're doing so without necessarily having a degree of interaction with the generated space. So, in that sense, these projects are not very. I mean, we could make an argument they're student centered, but they're not. They're not generated, they're not being created by students. There are a number of projects that are coming out these days that also try to sort of flip it, where rather than relying on the materials that are already sort of pre-made either by instructors or by third-party actors, they sort of try to get students to design these experiences on their own. And this is, of course, something that puts the student in the center of the classroom, and takes advantage of this idea of an EMIC experience, where we experience the reality through the eyes of the person who narrates or who records, who conveys it. So that ties in with storytelling, of course, but or digital storytelling could be related to that. But more importantly, it kind of pushes us in the direction of student of more interactive, kind of more
Mhm.
engaging extended reality experiences.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Nice.
so yeah, and that kind of approach, where students are asked to create their virtual reality experiences, usually relies on just simply going out into the wild, as Steve Thorne would say, and documenting what they see, right? So the linguistic landscape, or the semiotic landscape, and then doing something with it, right? And are either interacting with it, or explaining it, or maybe elaborating on it, which kind of sets us, or kind of hints at this idea of, or with the multiliteracies approach, where as an instructor you scaffold a learning experience in a way that takes advantage of certain
Yeah.
multimodal digital artifacts, or artifacts that could be made digital. So, yeah, that already sort of hints at one pedagogical framework, one approach that could be linked and applied in extended reality settings. What I'm interested in is all of the above. There is there are a couple workshops that I've done on the use of multiliteracies in extended reality settings, and kind of structuring these student-centered projects for for virtual reality. But I'm also interested in sort of a slightly different approach to VR that has to do more with cognitive science and cognitive linguistics specifically, and that is how virtual reality could, or extended reality technologies could also be used for grammar, morphosyntax, and vocabulary acquisition. There are some studies that are coming out now that look into vocabulary learning in virtual environments, and whether it is, and its effectiveness. Sure. And effectiveness would be then, assessed through either retention rates or recognition rates. And it looks very promising. And it should be promising because the way that our brains work is, it's thoroughly visual. Like, we are encoded for spatial learning, or wired for spatial learning. And why not take advantage of it? And there's already a lot of research on that in the field of cognitive linguistics, right? We know how our brains sort of structure language, how metaphors are employed to sort of understand certain grammatical notions, certain lexical notions. So what I'm interested in is whether these mechanisms, these metaphors, could be used to sort of facilitate language learning in a virtual reality setting, right? Which I think would also be one of the directions in which XR, or extended realities, will develop in the future.
Well, speaking of these future developments, can you talk a little bit about where do you see XR and this entire field headed, especially again with an eye toward, what the implications would be for the world language classroom?
So I think that as these technologies are becoming more accessible, cheaper, more embedded in our everyday lives, it is through our personal mobile devices, or even the computers that we have access to at our workplaces and universities. I think there's going to be, with this accessibility, you will see proliferation of different uses. And certainly it will become a lot more easier for students to create their own virtual reality experiences and to engage in them, whether it is be it through their phones, or with things like Google Cardboard, or maybe even through kind of more accessible, cheaper, full immersion virtual reality headsets. And so with that, I think that will lend the instructors an opportunity to develop, perhaps, or to weave extended reality technologies and materials into their classrooms, or into their curricula, perhaps a little bit more extensively. Another thing trend that I see happening is, as more and more people have access to these technologies, there will be more and more applications, or sort of platforms, that will become available for people to interact with each other in virtual space. We've all heard about Second Life, which is an immersive platform. However, it is dimensional. It is on your screen. There are similar platforms that are already in existence, for better or worse. They're for now available for kind of more expensive headsets and hardware, but they're there, and there's going to be, I think, more and more of these. And I think what we will see is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ready Player One, where the main character is this person who is immersed, or who basically lives in this virtual reality environment in this post-apocalyptic world. So I think that there maybe it won't go to that extent, but I think the social potential of these technologies will be so that it will become increasingly easy for people to connect to each other in the virtual space and to relate to each other, which of course will open up brand new opportunities for us as language instructors.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, nice.
So where can people who are interested in these technologies find out more information?
So we have been working very slowly, and now the pandemic has slowed us down even further, on a special interest group on extended reality technologies within IELT. The interest group has been formally established. We do have a mailing list, we do have a forum, and we do have a domain for the website. The website is xr.lrc.columbia.edu, which is long, but not that difficult to remember. There is absolutely nothing on it right now. It says "Hello World,"
yes.
and
very good,
and a bunch
Nice.
of kind of WordPress fillers. But it will be developed. I'm going to be working on it over the summer. I do have a colleague who's interested in working on it with us. So hopefully, gradually, we'll be able to establish ourselves online, and to do so within IELTS structure. Now, in the meantime, our friends and colleagues at Calico are kind of step ahead of us. They do have an online presence and a functioning website for their special interest group on extended reality. I do not know at the top of my head what the URL is, but if one Googles Calico and the virtual extended realities, it should pop up right there. So I would, and then there's this podcast now too, which is pretty great.
Yeah, right. That's actually the best part about all of this.
Yes.
This is how we're going to take over the world. One extended reality at a time.
It's the same thing we do every night, Pinky.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, Simon, before we sign off, we would like you to share your favorite word with us in a language that you speak, that you are learning, that you have learned. What is that word?
So as a person who has trained in German, it would be amiss if I had chosen a word that is not in German. So that being said, my word of the day is verschlimmbessern, which
Love it.
translates to making something worse by trying to improve it. And I hope that by making a contribution to this podcast, I made it truly better or easier to understand for everyone, rather than making it even worse and more confusing.
I think you accomplished your goal. I do not think that you contributed to Verschlimmbesserung here. So all is good. All is good, Simon.
Excellent. Well, Simon, thank you so much for speaking of language with us today.
Thank you, guys. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We'll be back next week with another episode in our special focus on language teaching and learning strategies in a virtual space. Until then.
Auf Wiederhören.
The Language Resource Center is located on the ground floor of Stimson Hall on Cornell's main campus in Ithaca, New York. Check us out on the web at lrc.cornell.edu or look for Cornell LRC on Facebook and Twitter.
Speaking of Language is produced by Angelica Kramer and Sam Lupowitz.
Recorded by Sam Lupowitz.
Original music by Sam Lupowitz, Dan Gable, and Joe Gibson.
Thanks also to the College of Arts and Sciences at Cornell University.
As a reminder, the ideas and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the College of Arts and Sciences or any other official entity of Cornell University.
We thank our listeners, and do stay tuned for our next episode.